Remember, your mama would tell you, don't tell nobody what's going on in my house. Don't be talking my business in the street. Why can't I have the sleepover? The sleepover don't happen in Black families. They can come over and play here, but you can't sleep over there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Add Value podcast, the show where we dive deep into the issues that matter into our community. I'm your host, Ron Dunham, and today's topic, we'll be exploring something that's timely and also crucial to our community. So the state of the Black family and mental health is what we're going to be talking about.
Hey, welcome. My name is Marcus Lennon, and today we have two wonderful movers and shakers in the atmosphere and the sphere of the clinical world. We have first Mr. Patrick Aaron Brown coming out of Michigan and now located here in the great state of Georgia in Atlanta. And he has 20 years experience under his belt in the clinical atmosphere therapeutically in all areas. And he has something really special in regards to his specialty is in men's health and men's issues. And he has a really good topic and a really good concept called the clinical barbershop. And man, when you get excited about that, when you start to hear him talk and do those other things, it's really, really good. And then the other person we have Miss Allison Barrero Jones coming out of Staten Island, home of the Wu-Tang Clan, with 25 plus years in the game as a licensed clinical social worker. Another mover and shaker, like I told you guys earlier today, and they're going to help us discuss and really dive deep into the state of the Black family and mental health. So welcome. Now, when we talk about the state of mental health and we also talk about the Black family, let's just start at the root or something that you feel from the beginning. And we know the stigma is the stigma. So could you guys tell us in your experience, what have you encountered and how have you changed the narrative in your own atmosphere and space? And I'll let any one of you start. You know what? Ladies first.
Okay. Thank you, Marcus and Ron. Thank you for inviting me and having me. First, I would say that the stigma is still very, very real when it comes to people of color seeking therapy. I would say that it has people have, as the times have changed, us being in 2025 and um, clients being more open to it. They're coming, but kind of coming to just test the waters to see what it's about. And then they start to learn about it more and begin to feel comfortable. You know, as African Americans back in the day, remember your mama would tell you, don't tell nobody what's going on in my house. Don't be talking my business in the street. So when I go to therapy, that means I'm talking mama's business in the street, right? And so just getting the older ones to feel comfortable to even speak their truth in therapy is really important. Patrick?
Yeah, thank you once again for Marcus and Ron to invite me here as well. So thank you for that. So I work primarily with men and men issues within the community, and I'm finding there has been an increase in men participation. Now, why is that? I think the stigma is being moved to a lesser stigmatized way. So there's still a lot of work to be done, still a lot of movement that needs to be happening, but I think that more information and normalizing it. Now, the whole goal is to move mental health to be just as important as physical health, right? So if we can get that movement going there, then we can definitely make a better impact in addressing stigma within our communities. So there are definitely some marks in there, some improvement.
So I wanted to jump back in on what Patrick just said, because really therapy has been more normalized since COVID. And COVID is the thing that had people locked in their houses and feeling really uncomfortable. You didn't realize that you had mental health issues until you were stuck in a house with your husband 24 hours a day and with these kids that you had to help with their homework and their classwork, and you still have to do your job. And so outside of COVID, when we got on the other side of that, that allowed people to start to say, I'm going to need somebody to talk to about this because this has been really challenging.
In addition to that, come from an agency-wise, right? A lot of companies are offering EAP services, employment assistance programs. I think they're also getting people a little bit more familiarized, getting a little more comfortable with saying, hey, we're all struggling. you need somebody to talk to? Something that has also really helped deal with the issue with stigma in our communities.
We see that the Black family is carrying a lot of weight right now. Like you said, Allison, don't talk about, what goes on in this house stays on in this house, but we keep those generational traumas. What are some things we can do to unpack that? Because we see now, not only does grandmama dealt with that issue, mama's dealing with that issue now, that issue now is passed on to the children. What are some things we can do to unpack that and break the cycle?
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I will tell you that from in my private practice, my clinical headspace, I've seen a lot of sexual trauma, right? And women will come to therapy to try to work through that so that they can be in a relationship. And so what happens is it'll start off by, I can't seem to keep a man. I keep not picking the wrong man. I keep doing this. And then we start to dig, right? And get down to the root of what the issues are. And it generally stems, I'm not saying always, but from some type of childhood sexual trauma. And then when you talk to them, you find out that their mama had that trauma and or their grandmother. And so, as you're saying, it's kind of generational. And you're like, well, how's it generational? People don't just totally get molested, but it's how you tend to put yourself in position because you were raised with this mindset that this was okay or this happened, and brush it off, shake it off, like Chris Rock said. Shake it off. Everybody knows not to go in the room with uncle because he's that weird uncle. Well, he's the weird uncle. Ain't nobody saying nothing about the weird uncle. So these things happen, and then it creates this generational trauma. And to the point that even sometimes when you have children, you start to traumatize them because you're thinking you don't want this to happen to them. So how can I keep them safe? To the point that now you've got them afraid of the world and paranoid about what's happening. And can I have friends? And why can't I go to anyone's house? Why can't I have the sleepover? The sleepover don't happen in Black families. They can come over and play here, but you can't sleep over there. So that's another thing.
Yeah, I also add to that as well is that child trauma is a real thing. And that trauma impacts how we act and how we feel and what we do these days. So a lot of times people come to therapy, they don't put the two and two together, right? They don't understand, oh, okay, my childhood is now impacting what I'm doing now, right? So as part of the initiative is to go back to that trauma, going back to those situations, those events, and then try to process some of those thoughts and feel to try to connect the dots so that they can move forward on as well. So definitely a work in progress a lot of time to people that work through that trauma going on.
So as Patrick said, it is a where are we at? It's in clinical social work, we look at it from the primary issue, which is the issue that brings you in to therapy. And then there's the tertiary issue, which is the real issue. And the primary issue could be, I have all of these challenges in relationships. And when we drill down and connect the dots, as Patrick said, the tertiary issue, the main issue is, I've been a child of sexual trauma. And this is why now that as an adult, I behave in such a way.
Correct. That's really good. It's good to hear. So, a lot of times I always tell people, what's the root?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we don't, in our culture, we don't get down to the root. We deal with a lot of the surface things. And so the surface things, they can go on forever and ever and ever if you never deal with the root. And, when we talked about like historically, and you talk about the Black family and how, you grew up and they always like, be quiet. Do you think that silence has rooted some other concerns in our community in regards to like saying, mental health aspects of it, and also just how we deal with each other?
If I answer the question correctly, in my interpretation of it, a lot of times the absence of a conversation causes more problems, or the answers do not get addressed, right? And so if we're able to start having those normal conversations about what happened to you, and then that may be the starting point to try to adjust some of these other things that are going on in their lives. And so when I'm speaking with folks or individuals, getting them comfortable and to destigmatize what mental health services is. A lot of times they go on by what their mama said, they're going by what their dad said, what society says, and that could not necessarily be the accurate description of what therapy is. So one thing they do is kind of change the language sometimes. Let's have a conversation, right? Let's have a talk. then that would definitely get them to be a little bit more comfortable and open to ideas of having deeper conversation other than using the word therapy or counseling or psychotherapy or hypnotics and things like that. So the conversation has to be done. It has to be done in a very sensitive way due to a past history and trauma.
I love that you said that, Patrick, because I learned a long time ago that when you engage a client or a patient, you need to ask them, what happened to you? Because in our childhood or young adulthood, it's always been you did something. You were fresh, you were sassy, you did this, you did that. And it's made this person feel like they were the reason that this happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to ask them, what happened to you? What happened? So that they will be open to telling you, this is my story. This is what happened to me. Not I was, but everyone said I was out here being cute. What do I know about being cute and sexy at 10? Nothing. Nothing.
Mm,
Valid
that's
point
deep.
there.
That's deep. That's really deep. I think because I dealt with it myself, I had an experience, and, my father was in the service, and we had a really, really rocky relationship. And I couldn't understand why we had a rocky relationship. And when I found out that he was struggling with the post-traumatic stress disorder, I didn't know anything about it, right? Initially. And the thing about it is he struggled with it for years and never told anybody. So he had this rocky relationship across the board with family members, friends, co-workers, and everything else. But once I got a better understanding of it, I was able to relate to him, and our relationship changed. But I felt like I lost 20-something years of a great relationship with my dad, right? And so for me, this topic actually really hits home, right? Because for me, it's one of those things where I'm glad we're having the conversation. I'm glad we're talking about it, because I think we waste years and not being able to really enjoy our loved ones because of the lack of understanding. Is this
And
is something that you guys
sometimes,
feel?
Marcus, they don't know, right? And so you don't know what you don't know. And then as you get older and become an adult, you see things and you learn things from a different perspective. And you're like, that's what's going on here. And I like to tell my sister all the time, you act like there's a book on parenting that our parents chose not to read. There's no book on this thing, right? It's only what you've experienced. It's a mirror. I watched how things work, and you either liked it or you didn't like it, and you try to pivot to the best of your ability. You try not to show them so much hurt, harm, and danger. And sometimes it still hurts. But there's no book on this thing. And so to be an adult and continue to blame someone who's even deceased, that's my sister, you can't keep doing that, because at some point you have to take responsibility for your own actions and what's going on in your life. And you can't continue to blame people for what they've done. So to that part is sometimes they just didn't know. And as you get to know and become an adult, you're like, wow, I really see her. I really you see your parents for not just mom and dad, but as a human being, as someone who had an experience or some experiences. Like, let me tell you something. I can't imagine what it was like living in the South during those days. And it wasn't slavery, but they were still talking to you and treating you like you were crazy. And um, those are things that they experienced that you now are grappling with. Why are they so harsh and brash? And because I had to be. Why don't you smile? Because I had to keep that face on and be strong and do what I needed to do in order to survive.
To
Yeah, that was my
survive.
next question is, like you said, survive, because our parents, we were raised to have respect, because those things got you killed,
Right.
back in the day. And a lot of those traumas, they had, from then, we say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. We carry that now, and there's nothing wrong with that. I believe in having respect. But those things they went through, hey, sun street lights, now they used to make it, hey, you had to be in the house, street lights come on, those things that they had to do because you couldn't be out a certain time. And now we can carry some of those traditional things that I might have to go to work. I can't be in by the street. But the things we dealt with as a child, we bring those things. And you said now raising children, some of those traumas. And there's a Black man, how do we, I don't want to say be vulnerable, but open ourselves up when we come to therapy? What do you do to break down those walls as a therapist?
And go back to the whole idea of getting them in the door, reducing that stigma, and have those honest conversation about what's really going on with you. And so I think one of the things that is important to say that Black men in particular, I would say, have a lot of extra things that they're carrying on their shoulders. They got historical trauma, they got family trauma, they got cultural trauma, they got religious trauma, they have trauma in the society and community, right? And so those things definitely impact how you act, how you behave within your community, right? You can be the angry Black person, but tell me what happened and why you're so angry, right? Having no discussion about what's going on with you at that moment with that. And so I brought a lot of different topics there that we probably need to talk about, that the real things, right, that affects Black men in particular. If our mental health is not, mental health is affected by our family, our community, our finances, our religion, or spirituality, right? All those things impact how we view ourselves or how we view our community. And if those things are really off balance in a lot of ways, then that impacts how we see ourselves, right? And so I think it's important to kind of start again, have those conversations when necessary to dig deeper into what's really going on with a particular person.
I love that you said that, Patrick. The word you used was balance, right? And so even with the work-life balance, we're trying to find a way that we can balance getting our work done and then being part of the family, right? But then also in your family, there's a balance in there as well between you and your wife, your partner, your significant other, your children. And what does that balance look like? And so I had one client that came into me, and I'll never forget it. She said, Miss Allison, I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with my boss. She said, he talked so negatively to me. And then 2 days later, he'll come with a dozen flowers, roses, put it on my desk and be nice to me. She said, it's this back and forth thing with like, I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with my boss. That was crazy to me. And so it's just, I don't know that we always look at what the world throws at the Black man, if you would say that. I think as a woman, women tend to say, oh, they're men, they're supposed to be able to handle it. But I love to say it, they have feelings too. They have feelings too, ladies. And so when the world has beaten him up and he comes home, and the first thing you do is start gnawing on him, he's just like, can I just get a minute? Can I just go sit down in this corner for a second and take my shoes off and woosah for a second before you come at me, before you tell me the kids did this or the kids need that? Can I get something to eat? Can I get the big piece of chicken, as Chris Rock would say? What are we going to do? We want our men to nurture us, but we also have to be nurturing too.
And that's a very good point. I think a lot of times our men that do not have a platform to have that space to do that. And so, like you said, you can beat up at work, you can beat up at home, you can beat up in the community, dealing with microaggressions and law enforcement and so on and so on. But where's my time to talk this out? Who can I talk to in a safe spot, right? And a lot of times, again, stigma is saying that you shouldn't talk. You should not have a platform. You shouldn't do that. You should be a man and stand up and take it all. But that's not really reality, right? So it's important to find that community or find that spot where you can have a safe spot to talk about the issues and topics, right? We're not invulnerable. We have feelings and thoughts and emotions just like our female partner counterparts do as well. But we often are not acknowledged. We are often not provided the resources or the platform to have a discussion about what's really going on in their mind and their heart.
I heard someone say that men are trying to find their identity in this society based off of the blurred gender roles of the previous generation. What are your thoughts on that?
That's heavy. And I like to say any guy that wants to come in here and put his shoes under my bed permanently and take over this thing can have at it. I think that men think women, oh, you just want to be in charge. You want to be in control. You want to do this. We have had to be in control. We have had to do all of those things because we were by ourselves. Well, you shouldn't have had children. You shouldn't have had children with this man, that man, and not had this. This predates us. This goes back to slavery when the Black man was brought to different women's homes to impregnate them, to have these bucks to work on it. They weren't taught to be in a family unit. You took them from Africa, you dispersed, broke up their family, and then taught them this way of life. And so now you want them to go back. We want them to be a family, all of us, but that is still in our DNA, how the Black family was broken apart. And so what you're all asking is, how do we put that Black family back together? And I think this podcast is very important because that's what you all are trying to identify. How do we get it back together? How do we get our parents and grandparents? I tell couples all the time, divorce is easy. Staying married is hard. Do you think people have been married for 50 years and they're old and sitting at that table have never had an issue? Yeah, they've had plenty of issues. There were plenty of times, as my friend Glenn would say, you got to bite the pillow. There are plenty of times. But what did I do? Did I pick up my shoes and walk out of this house? No. I stayed and I worked it out and I stayed inside of it.
To that point, and thanks for sharing that as well, I think it's kind of trying to redefine some things here in regards to role identity, right? So a lot of time men are saying, okay, I want to be here. I want to be present. I want to be, quote unquote, a man, right? But then the spouse is like, well, you're a bunch of crap. You're not worthy. You can't keep up. You're not paying the bills. You're not, again, the microaggressions that happen, and then you start thinking that about yourself, and then you don't do anything, right? So I think we kind of redefine, or at least be more empathetic and understanding, and come up with the way that both parties, male and female, to figure out what best works for them, and making those roles identify with what their needs are, not necessarily what society said the needs should be, right? So I think that a lot of it kind of readjusting to ensure that the Black family stays together by redefining or reinforcing some of those ideas and concepts that worked with that.
So I want to jump in because I'm here on a panel with 3 men of color, strong Black men. And the question is, we both work. So if I work and you work and we both get home, can you help me with these kids, this laundry, this house cleaning? You want me to assume the woman's role, quote unquote, when I get home, and then you want me to assume the woman's role under the covers. I am tired. So how do you, back to the roles that you were saying, the gender roles, like we're at home. So can you not finish watching the game or let it play and vacuum the floor or, do something to make my load lighter so that I can then be lighter, right? After I've worked and come home and done all of that and cooked and get cleaned up, I'm angry because I'm tired. I want to go to bed and I want you to leave me alone.
There is a solution to that.
Get them, Patrick.
It is communication. Back to the communication issue, right? So we are able to communicate with each other and express how we feel in a safe way, then there won't be all the yelling and screaming, conflict, that's going on. Black family have issues with communicating with each other, right? And we, as Black men, have been not taught to communicate. What does that look like, right? So we kind of go back to basics and go back to basic communication about what you would like, what you feel, what you think, and get both parties to do the same. That would be a great start to mending and to strengthening Black families in regards to that. The communication is the key.
I love that, Patrick. So the point for us is, you see these dirty clothes? We all in here. Do I have to tell you? Do I have to communicate to you that these clothes is dirty?
Yes.
Or can you take it upon yourself and say, oh man, they laying on the floor in the laundry room. She must not have got a chance to toss them in there. Hey babe, you want me to toss these clothes in? What, do I need anything separated? Don't throw my bras in the dryer because then the rubber will rub off of them. We don't do that.
Women are from
That's
Mars,
why I don't like
men
y'all
are from
touching my bras
Venus.
at all. Be clear.
Women from
Y'all throw it
Mars,
right
men
in the
from Venus.
dryer and then it'll be a whole nother argument.
I'm guilty.
A whole
Same
nother
here. Yeah,
argument.
it's in the dirty clothes.
That
It's
go to
going in there.
right.
Right.
It's in the dirty clothes. You
All of
ask
them
me
go
to
to the
do
same
laundry.
place.
Right.
Everything goes to the same place.
Right.
Just get it out there, right? Get it done. I think one of the things that I also look at is that, in having communication with a lot of, married people and different things of that nature, communication is definitely something that I always talk about or, have that conversation about. But, I also think about too is, which is when, way young and when I was a little young lad and whatnot, somebody said, whenever you get married and you're in a relationship, you should have a goal and a vision for it. You should have a plan for your marriage. You should have a plan for your relationship, right? And so that goes back to communication. I think sometimes like roles and stuff like that are not established because people are not having those real conversations. I think a lot of times we have conversations that's surface level to say, well, what's your favorite color, right? But they're not really talking about the real stuff. And so for me, that's where I kind of look at sometimes and be like, hey, are we really talking about things of the heart, matters of the heart? Because we can touch all this other stuff all day long, but are we really talking about those things that really, touch the heart?
So I want to jump in on that one because that was excellent. So what happens is that really speaks to marital counseling, right? For us having this conversation before we get married. I always tell couples there are three things that'll bring you to the therapy: sex, finances, and child rearing. And the number one thing will be child rearing. You have an idea. You and your wife are together and we're having the time of our life. I love her. She loves me. Things are great. Then we have a child. Well, we never had a conversation about I'm Baptist and you're Methodist. We never had a conversation about how my child is going to be raised. We didn't have a conversation about what you think is I want my child to have natural hair. Well, I think my child should get a perm. We never had a conversation about that. You said, as Marcus said, what's your favorite color? It was about us two. Now there's three of us. And where men have a tendency to lose, and I hate to say it though, is when she becomes someone's mother. Well, she's not your girlfriend no more. The freak of the week is gone because somebody else's is more important to me at this point than you are. And you're like, where did my wife go? Come back home, please.
I think that, again, goes back to communication again, right? Because if things change, if the dynamics change, then you got to change the conversation that make it meaningful to what's happening at that moment, right? Yes, wife, I understand you had a baby. Yes, I am now helping you with X, Y, and Z. The role changed a little bit. The conversation changed a little bit. But I think it's important for both parties to come to the table with suggestions and conversation. Not just one person, but both parties to come in there. So, hey, I don't like to teach anyone by to do anything, but I may need to teach you because we're not on the same page. Let me explain to you what I need done. Then they can go, okay, I didn't know you wanted it that way, or I didn't know I needed to do that. Okay, now we're both on the same page now. Now I'm willing to help and be assisted in any way I can. So both parties would need to communicate about what their needs are, what their wants are, what their goals are, and bring to the table, and then come to a common ground where they can be successful in their marriage, in their relationship.
Patrick, I got a good question for you. Since you deal with a lot of men issues, right?
Yeah.
There's the buzz topic out there, or buzz phrase, in regards to emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, men struggle with expressing and talk about their feelings. And I know you work with men all the time. What support systems, what resources, or even what information or advice do you give men who struggle in that area?
Good question. I would say be honest with what you're feeling. Acknowledge, be aware of what's going on with you emotionally. I think if you can get to that point, then you can kind of start trying to figure out what you need, so to speak, and or find a therapist that can assist. So a lot of times, my clients would like to see a male therapist. The reason why is they feel like there is already a unified bond. that they can talk to and think with and express and feel comfortable with. So that is already one step up. So find a therapist that you feel comfortable with, maybe same gender and same race, can definitely be helpful to definitely start that process of being emotionally intelligent. Most of my clients, well, they want to talk. I don't like in the area where they can't talk. This is on a safe spot where they feel that they could actually cry. They want to yell, they want to scream and be okay with it. I often tell them, come to my office, we'll talk and chat. You can spit, you can cry, you can moan, or you can be silent. But whatever you feel at the moment, this opportunity to work through those issues and those emotions, and hopefully by the end of the shift of time, you'll be a little bit better, right? So I think providing those platforms like that would definitely be helpful to start that emotional intelligence that's going on. However, it takes two people still, right? If you're in a relationship and you're growing, spouse also need to grow and be aware of her own emotional intelligence as well, and what that means for her.
Thank you. You know what? And that makes a lot of sense for me, right? And so when I'm listening to you talk and everything else, I'm like, man, he's spot on with a lot of things, right? And so for, like some of the people that I run in just in the community and they start talking about certain things. And so I have men who say, I'm working on my emotional intelligence, but I feel like it's not being heard on the other side. Miss Allison, from the woman's perspective, what advice would you give say another woman whose husband, spouse, partner is trying to work on becoming more emotional intelligent and being able to express themselves, that may help them be able to identify with that person to kind of help bridge the gap some?
Well, it's challenging because as women, we want you to talk. We want you to talk to us. We want you to be able to be vulnerable with us. It's frightening though, because when you become vulnerable, and it's not reciprocated, then that is something that could shut a man down for the rest of his life and be like, I'll never talk to another woman like that again. I gave you all of my insides and you just threw them down. And, it was difficult. So I like to go from a standpoint of self-love, which I'd love to come back and talk more about. And in self-love, we are most hard on ourselves. That inner voice that tells you, you are so dumb. Why did you do that? You are stupid. You will talk down to yourself faster than you'll talk down to any friend, family member, or a stranger in the street, but you will beat yourself all the way up. And so knowing, I like to say, is half the battle. And so if you know that we as humans have a propensity to do that, when your partner's coming to you being vulnerable, you have to be able to say, I know he's already beaten himself up about this. So that's not my job to beat him up any further or to emasculate him. So that is and a lot of women do emasculate men. I hate to say it out loud, of the quietly thing that's said loud and don't realize they're doing it. I'll say that. Some do, but the things that you say you can't take words back, and they stay in the back of your mind for a long time. Every negative thing that someone has said to me, I have repeated back to them, and they were like, I didn't say that. Oh, when I tell you that it cut me to my core, that you said it to me, oh, I got a little thing going on there. It cut me to my core. I'll never forget it. So when you say, I don't remember saying that, you still did. And your husband still hurts behind it. And he still thinks that, wow, she thinks that my job is useless. And I don't know why you're going out there to waste your time. It's not bringing in enough money. You need to go find something else to do. And why do you keep, and it's their way. People think that's an encouragement. That's not an encouragement for me to get another job. It's not.
Right.
Do you think we can learn some things from old school, things, grandma was married and she would teach the younger women this is how you, cook and do all these things, like I said, those lines were back in the day. Have we lost some of those ways, with, you know, you see
So I like
relationships now.
I like you said that because you said that about grandma, and it made me feel like you were talking about women, but who is there giving that to the men? The grandpas who are teaching men to stick with their families the way they did and to provide and do all that stuff. I have dated in my past, and men have said specific things to me to the point like, you are just different. When I say I was raised in the church, these church ladies taught me how I'm supposed to serve a man. And that's from young. Serve the plate, take the plate up, do this. I mean, and like you said, old school taught us that and how to be a mother to your child. It was very interesting when, you know, you really flashed me back to my childhood church and the women that were there that I was extremely close to that were not my biologicals or my parents. They were just women in the church that took a liking to me, and I cared for them deeply. And I still have relationships with some of them that are still alive to this day. So yeah, that is important. But you know, where are older men who can, I feel like men need mentors, right? 100 Black men, all of this stuff. They need mentors. They need a guide. That's part to me what the military is and the fraternities. The fraternities, all of them are there to teach men to be solid stand up kind of guys and to be educated and to care for your family. And to, before I became Greek, I didn't really know the premise of fraternities and sororities. And when I started learning, I was like, wow, just to see what and how it's taught. It really, to me, was almost set up for people who didn't have a family. And you're this family. That's your sister. That's your brother. That's somebody that if they're falling down, you put your hand out to help them. And that is part of a family when we're talking about the circles of family too.
Definitely.
Oh,
Definitely.
and
You know, just talking about grandma, and grandpa, I said, man, y'all go way back, right? But that dynamics is, you know, y'all brought up some old memories and you start seeing the old men just sitting under the tree and really working on cars and, you know, for me growing up in where I grew up at, you know, they would stop you and be like, where you going? What you doing? And then they would give, you know, life stories and gestures along the way. So for me, you know, one of the things I always look at when I try to look at and try to ground myself some is I try to look for wisdom, right? And so I look at wisdom in the older generation sometimes. So like my grandparents on both sides are deceased at this moment, right? So I just capture the wisdom of other great people and spearheads in the community. And I just kind of sit down and listen to it because for me, I grew up knowing that you can't live and operate in this world without wisdom. And for me, that translated to the family setting as well. So a lot of things that I've learned and kept in my little toolbox and toolkit came from the older generation just sharing certain things. So, you know, so when we talk about family, you know, it's just a little bit different and what we're seeing right now. So the dynamics had to shift and then change. And I also believe the family need to shift and change as well, you know, to accommodate, you know, what we have going on. But there still should be foundational things that should remain the same. So thank y'all for just trying to transition to that part. Y'all brought up some old memories. Now I'm going to go find me some old people to kind of talk to.
Right.
So it's some old seasoned people.
Let me ask y'all a question. Do you think we should put depression telling a young male that they're the man of the house? You know, somebody that's 10 years old, you know, who, you know, let's say their parents have experienced divorce or, you know, there was never marriage, but a man was present and now not there, and telling a young male, you're now the man of the house at an early age.
My question to that question is, what does it mean to be a man of the house, right? So you got to figure out what that means, right? Does that mean that you are now paying the bills? Does that mean that you're now out cutting the grass and make sure that you get the, what does that mean, right? But you can figure out what that means in an age-appropriate way, then that may be a different story. For example, if I say, okay, now my 13-year-old, you're the man of the house while I'm at work, which means that make sure the trash is out, make sure your brother and sister is safe, making sure that the mom is safe, making sure that all the doors are locked for safety issues, right? If something comes up, who do you call? Call me, right? So it's that great moment that would be appropriate, but you got to figure what the expectations are of when you say that and what does that actually mean and how the individual kid is interpreting that. Okay, now I'm out, not to slap around my mom. Is that what you say, right? So we got to be very careful about, or at least get more information about what does that actually spelled out for the individual person.
That's good.
I was about to say that's a real good answer, because I do believe sometimes we set the wrong expectation for younger generation. It's like, you're the man of the house. Like you said, what does that mean? Right? And then the other thing is that, did they ever have anybody to show them what manhood looks
Right.
like? Right?
Right.
So I absolutely agree with you in regard to, we gotta need to set the expectation. And I think that's where a lot of mentoring come from. And, I know, a lot of females that I've met, and just in my experience, in my journey, when they meet someone, they put them in, like, sports activities where they're around other men, where that male bonding can be in place and whatnot. So, I definitely agree with you, but I do believe that there needs to be an expectation, based on the situation. Because you're not the man of the house. If you 9 or 10, you're a male in the house.
Mm.
And now we need to set the expectation for your role here. So I definitely agree with that portion, of everything. That's a very good question. Thank you for the answer, as well. So if we're looking at the Black family and just saying where we are right now, so there's stresses everywhere. So I have seen a lot and heard a lot of people talking about being stressed out, having some anxieties, being depressed. Could you guys give us some solutions in regards to, just from a standpoint of, like, Allison, you started to go there a little bit about self-care, right? What are some things that people can do to kind of relieve some of that pressure? Because I think if you relieve some of the pressure off of you, it may relieve some pressure off of the family. Could you talk about some of those things that, just from your experience, and just kind of help us along that journey, Tom?
Well, that's one of the things that I encourage the women that come to see me to do, enlist in self-care. We identify what that looks like. If that means you get your nails done, or you go to the gym and work out, if you have brunch with your girlfriends, or there are a host of things that they can do. As women, we have a tendency to put this cape on, right? And become this superwoman. And I did a training on that once and then the music goes along with it. INDEPE, independent. Well, we're showing up saying that we got a cape on. We're trying to save everybody. And in saving everybody, we lose ourselves. And so you're taking care of grandma or grandpa or both of them, the kids, your husband, work, the home, the everything. When do I get a minute to sit down? And when you don't get it, then sometimes resentment forms, right? And so those are things that we talk about in therapy as well. Like, how do you feel about this? I have a client that I deal with that is Hispanic or Latina. And we got finally to the crux of the issue in her marriage with her husband and her 2 kids, which stemmed from her childhood, which was she took care of everybody. When her parents got divorced, she had to be that person. And her mom went to work. She made sure the siblings were taken care of, school, food, all of that jazz. And so while I wanted to jump in on that last question, when we put a child in an adult's place, they become what we call in therapy parentified. And so you can't take that back. So now you think we're both grown. You get to talk to me as an adult and not as a child. And then when I have had more kids come and sit on my couch and say, when they want me to do adult things, it's okay for me to be an adult. But when they're ready for me to be a child, they want me to sit down and take my phone and do different things like that when they're mad at me. You have to choose one. They can't be both, because when you are parentified, you have put them in a position of power.
Mm.
That's a position of power.
Right.
Because I'm like a parent. And so now you become an adult and you have a family and you're still caring for everyone. So you've been doing that from childhood until adulthood and into marriage. And you're just like, well, heck, I'm just tired. But because you've always done it, no one thinks that you're tired or that you don't want to do it. And that's where the resentment comes in. Does anybody not see me here? Does not anyone see that I'm doing all of this? They're like, oh, Allison got it. She got it. She's doing it. She always does that. That's her. That's what I don't want to. I do it because I have to, not because I want to. There's a difference. And so being able to take care of yourself and step away from it. And you would think that these people, the one client I had that said, I did it, I left. And she said, but I did prep the food for the 3 days I was gone. So that all he had to do was take it out. I said, that's not bad at all. You can prep the food because what you going to do? Let them starve because they're going to eat pizza the whole time you're gone. Just she prepped the food and she was able to go for the weekend with her friends. And she said, I had the best time. And they didn't die. They didn't starve. Everybody made it okay. And then her husband and the kids got a chance to see, wow, mom does a lot of stuff here. This was terrible. I don't ever want you to go away because when you're not here, then we have to do it. No, dear. Now we all need to pitch in and do it.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, definitely.
Mr. Patrick, chime in from the male perspective.
Yeah. Before I do that as well, I want to take a step back as well in regards to parental that is definitely a real thing, and you definitely got to be careful not to allow that to happen. But there's also a point where we need to start teaching our kids when we just to go in that area, right? Does that mean, again, more conversation that needs to have, right? Maybe that term, not their turn to be a man in the household while I'm away, maybe they're teaching him certain things, not forever, he still knows his role in regard to family structure, but it may be teaching and helping that child understand that as a young man or as a young person, there's certain responsibilities that come with being a male, right? If you want to follow rules and so forth. Now, in regards to my men who come in, they have no self-care. Or they do have self-care, their self-care is inappropriate self-care. Excessive drinking, excessive sex, excessive all the other stuff that comes along with that. So one of the things that we talk about is trying to find healthy ways of dealing with the stress, right? So something they do is they may communication, letting your wife know what they want to do, and they go do it, right? Finding that purpose. If you are doing your job all day long, it's not really fulfilling. Find something that is fulfilling and do it, right? And so volunteering, some folks like to do that. It kind of gives them that sense of purpose, that sense of meaning again. I know that I'm working 2 jobs, but I really enjoy working with the kids. That gives me something released from doing my normal task. So also self-care, we talk about a lot, is just being true to yourself and acknowledging where you are. If you are upset, you are or tired, what do you need to do to get back to that baseline where you can feel good about yourself? Again, that may be getting that extra hour of sleep, letting your wife know that you need 30 minutes. Talk to the kids and let the kids know I need 20 minutes before we go do X, Y, and Z. So having the open communication is so important.
So we say, treat yourself, don't cheat yourself.
Yes, yes.
And then, Patrick, you made me think of something because in that same couple that I deal with, I talked to her about backhanded compliments. When you give a compliment and then you turn around and poof, it's something else. I said, that's a backhanded compliment. This man has not let that go. He was like, this week she didn't give me any backhanded compliments, Miss Allison. Oh, okay. Oh, you did a really good job, but you could have done this differently and that differently. And that's a backhanded compliment. Either we complimenting or we're not complimenting. Either we're helping or we're not helping. We adding or we taking away.
Right.
So I love the fact that he was able to, he said, yes, you do that a lot. And that is the one thing that they love to come in every week and say whether or not they gave each other backhanded compliments.
And I love that because it allowed them to have that communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's able to say, hey, wife, I didn't like the way you said that, right? And then say, we just figure out a way to communicate differently or better to avoid those side conversations. So I think that is very, very important that both parties are able to express how they feel and then follow through with that. A lot of times we mute ourselves. Men, we keep it in. We won't say nothing. They really hate the color of the wall. They really hate the fuzzy carpet. We don't say that, right? But then every time we go in that room or walk on that carpet, we mad, right? So they be like, oh, okay. But if we're able to get into a spot where we can talk about what we really feel, then we can address these microaggressions that we have, right? I think Black men in itself have a lot of microaggressions that are unresolved situations that are stuck on us. And so we now need to unstick them. We need to get unstuck by taking those things off so we can live a happier life mentally, emotionally, and physically, and spiritually.
Yep. As we unpack all that, Marcus, go ahead. I'll let you yield to your question.
Yeah, I just had a thought, and I might take a detour for a second. And this is something that came up to me, and this is something that came up through I was talking to a police officer. And since we're talking about the state of the Black family, we're gonna take the mental health portion out for a second, right? So this is just the state of the Black family. An officer told me that they have seen a rise in gang activity for African American youth who come from a family household of $500,000 a year and more. And in talking with this officer, his question was to me, where are the parents? And as you guys were just talking this now, it made me just think about that as well, right? So, state of the Black family, we got money. We're not broke no more. What's driving our youth still to be in a situation that they don't need to be a part of at this moment? I'm just interested in hearing.
Go for them.
Okay, because they're still looking for a family.
Right.
Marcus, the family's gone. When you said how much money they made, that means they're not home, they working.
Yeah.
They're building businesses, they're building wealth, they're out doing their thing. And I'm looking for that connectedness. What happens is the kids require structure. When you don't provide that for them, today's session, I had the mother and the daughter in there, and she's like, I just don't know what to do. I said, you think that at 13, she's mature, and she's not. Cognitively, she's not there, and she needs you to provide her with structure. I said, what are you going to do this summer? She said, well, I asked her what she wanted to do, and she said she didn't know. I said, you ain't supposed to ask, and if she don't know, you're supposed to come up with, well, I guess you'll be going to the YMCA camp and put that on out there. And the girl was like, I don't want to do. Either you're going to figure out something or I'm going to identify something for you. So there's no one at home. So I'm going to hang out with the gangs. I'm going to hang out with people who I consider to be my family. Patrick, you said you wanted to jump in?
Well, to your point, and I totally agree with you that lack of parental guidance and love and family structure, right? And so that goes to show you that money does not buy everything. Money does not make you happy at all, right? It's those family connections, it's those social connections that give you purpose and meaning in life. And so with that absent of that, then it's going to go left, right? So that will be my guest thought in regards to that. Now, how to come back and resolve that issue or fix the issue will require parents to be present and willing and able to put their family first, right? So you put your family first, then you have more of a tool or key to try and make sure the family can get back together again.
Willing and able to put your family first. But you know what happens is that they tend to think that because they grew up with nothing or not much and didn't have, I'm making this 100,000 and more so that my child can have things that I didn't have. But what they really want is you. Right. All they want for Christmas is you.
Mm-hmm. So Mariah Carey put out a good song there.
Oh, dear.
Yes.
And I agree with you both, right? And so when the officer asked me the question, I kind of took a step back a little bit because I wanted to know what his response was. So I just asked him the question and you guys nailed it. He said, my question is, when I asked you where's the parents, he was like, is work more important than the family?
Mm.
And I said, Good observation. I said, each case is, from an individual base, so I can't talk about it. I don't know. But I wanted just you guys to have that question, because when he said that to me, I was like, we done moved up like the Jeffersons. What's going on here, right? But I also know, since we moved up in the demands of corporate America and America in itself, you know, that change has happened and shifted, right? But I guess what was horrifying for me, or concerning to me, alarming, whatever you want to call it, was the fact that we have young people who have the gold spoon, in a sense, based off of the median of our culture, right? And they're presenting in a way that's different from everybody's. And so I just wanted to say thank you guys for answering that, because I felt the same way. But I just wanted to see, because I know from a clinical lens is different from a law enforcement or correction lens, because, the protective factors are different. But that's why I said I know we're going to go on a different journey. But you guys nailed it, in my opinion, which is the structure of the Black family, and being in a position where you belong. But you guys are the experts, so I appreciate you guys talking about it.
And that's a very good question. The question is, how do Black families adapt to that, right? How can they redefine what the family looks like with all this money that they have now? And so those are good conversations that need to be had by both parties. Yes, we're making all this money now, but we still have 3 kids. How are we going to prioritize this? Or what should we prioritize first? Back to communication in terms of what each person value as important to not only themselves, but the family as well.
That's good. Now, as we wrap all this up, y'all unpackage everything for me. What are some things that we can do as a Black family, to improve on making sure we get the help we need?
Well, I think that we need to be open to doing things differently. I have a 23-year-old that I see, and she says, I think the problem between me and my mom is that we're in 2 different generations, because she had me when she was older and her mother's in her mid 60s. And she said that I take my mental health seriously, and she doesn't understand why I come and see you. And so being open to learning and understanding the importance of being able to process your feelings, your childhood traumas, your relationship traumas, your traumas with your parents. There are a lot of things that we have experienced, experiences of racism that some of us need to talk about and get over and get out, that have happened to us: death, dying, bereavement, all of those things. When you're sitting in there still feeling so empty and lost because of the loss of a loved one, you really need to work on that. And how can you bounce back from that? So I just would really say that we need to try to be open to seeking this kind of help. This is a new thing, even though we've been doing it for years. It's just became more on the radar now. And I'm grateful for it, because people are now starting to address some of the challenges that they've been having in life.
Excellent. Yeah. I would like to add on this. I would listen to each other more and show empathy towards each other. If you can get more listening and more empathetic, that would definitely open up more of an understanding of who your family is, and who your partner is, and how your kids are, right? And find an environment where you can be loved, and loved hard and consistently, right? We want to be loved. And so one way to do that is to listen more and get an understanding of each other.
I get it. And thank you guys for that, because, as you guys know, the name of the podcast is Let's Add Value. So we always want to add value, and always have, those ending segments where you have some golden nuggets to move on with, right? So one of the things that we talked about today was the state of the Black family and mental health. My last statement rather, is this right here. And I want you guys to answer this, and we can go do whatever we want to do. Y'all can go dance, y'all can go party, y'all can go shake, and everything else, right? So if somebody came up to you and ask you, does therapy work? What would your response be? Does therapy work?
Yes, I'll say therapy works. Definitely.
I would say absolutely.
Yeah, definitely works. Again, this is a platform where you can have a release. Talked about self-care, right? Talked about self-love, and therapy can be a part of that. Giving yourself the time to value yourself enough to talk about issues that you may be having challenges with.
I had a client tell me once, "You're my alley angel." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "I would not have made it through this portion of my life without being able to talk to you." And she said she felt like I was an angel that God sent to talk to her, talk her through her challenges. So absolutely.
Excellent.
Well, definitely, definitely. We appreciate you guys coming in and sharing all the wisdom, the knowledge, and this therapeutic atmosphere, this podcast. You know, one of the things that I can tell you right now that I've been blessed by hearing, you know, a lot of the information that you guys shared and talk about. I know you guys have had many success stories and even, you know, moving into your own space. So, you know, from me to you, and I know my man Ron said the same, you know, definitely appreciate you guys taking the time and being here. And you know, you guys are always welcome here, anytime, anywhere,
Absolutely.
all the time. And so, Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you, but I just want you guys to know that I really appreciate you. And thank you for letting me learn alongside you guys.
Thank
Definitely,
you.
we appreciate it, Miss Allison, and you're my alley angel as well. So thank you, Patrick. I wouldn't say that. You're my man, Patrick. Right?
Hey,
Right. Right. But as we, right, absolutely, right on. Yeah, a little right on, right, Patrick. All right, so we would encourage everyone out there, our audience, to share this podcast with your family and friends, to know that yes, therapy does work, and that you can definitely take advantage of it. Some things we need to unpack, y'all, in our community. So I don't want you all to forget, but we want you all to like and subscribe and come back for our next episodes. And together we know that we can break the stigma and we can build a healthier future for our Black families. That's our time for today, folks. Thank you all.